And just like that, he's back! On the 8th of October, 2023, the American journalist Andrew Callaghan and his eponymous Channel 5 YouTube channel made what Party Boy 69 would describe as a hard yet soft come back to the internet after being canceled as a mother just a week ago. I mean, it was like a year ago, but you get the point. And it's like he never left. In fact, Andrew Callaghan is back, bigger, better, a little bitter. We'll talk about that later. And currently hiring fresh young talent to join the growing Channel 5 news team. Teleritmo, Channel 5 Latino Internacional. Golazo! And it's got the internet, including people in his own community, divided and a little confused. There's an elephant in the room, and the elephant looks and sounds a little bit like, what about those grape allegations? We gonna talk about that? No? Oh, okay. Oh, he beat the allegations. He beat the allegations. And he said sorry. Well, I'm glad we're all in alignment and ready to move forward into Q1 with nothing but joy, love, and positivity. I'm Corporate Aaron. Thanks for joining the Zoom call on such short notice. Case closed. In the fall of 2022, Andrew Callaghan was on top of the world. After years of traveling America in an RV with his homies to tell the stories of the wacky yet oddly endearing people he met along the way for YouTube, Andrew was about to hit the big leagues. Andrew had secured a major distribution deal with HBO Max on a feature-length documentary film he directed called This Place Rules, set to be released at the end of that season. The HBO deal represented an opportunity for Andrew to transcend his underground internet fame and not only turn him into a mainstream household name, but also legitimize him in the mainstream as our generation's digital Hunter S. Thompson incarnate. A millennial superstar gonzo journalist for the ages. This Place Rules was also the cherry on top of the success story that his YouTube channel, Channel 5 News with Andrew Callaghan, had become when just a few years earlier, a bad contract had almost left him and his collaborators without a platform. Basically, this project was poised to be a major victory moment added onto an already impressive victory lap. But right when Andrew Callaghan was about to blow, ghosts from his past would get wind of his impending success and be like, oh hell no. And just like that, it all came crashing down.
I never in a million years thought that I would be making this video, and I'm shaking because I've tried a couple different times and haven't been able to get my point across, but I don't like seeing abusers get platforms.
Days after This Place Rules premiered on HBO Max, women started coming forward on the internet alleging that Andrew Callaghan was more than just a traveling journalist, but also that over the years he had been a traveling predator of sorts. As Tableau Ross so eloquently framed it, Andrew Callaghan had not only been on tour, he had allegedly been on a SA World tour, and alleged victims would come out of the woodwork to paint a truly harrowing picture. The allegations these women came forward with included, but were not limited to, harassment, assault, grape, stalking, and just generally displaying an alleged pattern of being a weirdo who can't take no for an answer. It was bad, it blew up the internet, and Andrew Callaghan was canceled. I had no idea who Andrew Callaghan was before his downfall, but in retrospect, I now understand why it shook the online world. This was the story of a creator who had built a brand/persona for himself, championing certain values, notably that of radical empathy, self-awareness, etc. Yet the image these victims would come forward to paint of his character was in direct contradiction to that. But also, let's call a spade a spade. It was a good story. The Andrew Callaghan PR crisis had all the elements of a riveting PR scandal for the digital age. We're talking getting publicly disowned by collaborators, friends getting sucked into the mud and spreading misinformation, blackmail accusations, more allegations, weird, awkward YouTube apologies, savage reaction content, victims getting fairly and unfairly picked apart by the public, creators who had a bone to pick with Andrew being like, ha! That's what you get for being a fucking... Months of internet exile, and then, right when you think he's done, an almost seamless comeback. The numbers haven't taken a hit, the reception is mostly positive, the content is better and more bountiful than ever, the company is growing, and there's been no follow-up on the scandal that made him disappear from the internet in the first place. Does there even need to be? except for subtle signs some fans of the channel picked up on that he may be bitter about how it all went down and may have not learned his lesson. This was the first YouTube scandal I ever witnessed in real time. I haven't been on this platform for that long. I'm a YouTube baby, and it had a really big impact on me. It made me realize I think I'm starting to feel a little sick. Google has been telling me it's cancer. It's always cancer. But as I started digging for this video, it dawned on me. I was experiencing a little something called allegation exhaustion. It's very similar to what some psychological scientists refer to as compassion fatigue, and I got the feeling that I wasn't alone. The main symptom of allegation exhaustion is commonly known as having a really hard time giving a and taking any allegation you come across on the internet seriously, especially when the people coming forward make idiots out of themselves in the process. The origins of the disease is described in the IBDMV. You might be familiar with this monumental piece of scientific research from my Jonah Hill video, as a chronically online person's response to existing in an overwhelming information ecosystem where people are constantly being attacked, characters are constantly being assassinated, and drama is always popping off. It's a trauma response. It's also described as a physical manifestation of reckoning with the dark reality that sometimes the motives governing potentially destructive conflict on the internet don't always come from a noble place. We'd like to think that people fight out of a sense of justice or for the public good, but life will never fail to remind you that people also fight for selfish reasons like money, power, clout, and in this case, revenge. As a result, when faced with a never-ending stream of internet drama, the brain's give a receptors tend to just shut down. It's an unfortunate affliction, because what the Andrew Callaghan scandal taught me was that even though the motives behind someone instigating potentially destructive conflict on the internet may be human, but less than noble, it doesn't mean you should tune them out, because if you don't, you may gain some valuable insights about the current state of our culture. At least two of Andrew Callaghan's alleged victims hinted at the motives behind them coming forward being in part rooted in revenge. One later tried to backtrack and call it karma, but anyone paying attention knew it was revenge. Like many Caucasian people who appropriate foreign cultures they don't understand and then warp things like definitions to fit their agendas, they didn't play anyone but themselves. The public faces of the Andrew Callaghan scandal wanted their stories to be public so it could have a negative impact in the places that mattered to him, his career. Deplatforming seemed to have been the end goal, and I'm starting to think this is where things kind of went sour for their cause. If you go to your local Italian coffee shop and ask the barista if he knows anything about a guy called Johnny Scorsese, and the barista goes, Johnny. Oh yeah, Johnny. Yeah, he's all right. He's a bit weird with girls though. And then you go to your local barber shop and ask Dan the barber if he knows anything about a guy called Johnny Scorsese. And the barber tells you, Scorsese. Yeah, I heard he's a bit of a creep. So on and so forth. If your little sister comes up to you one day and tells you she's going on a date with Johnny Scorsese, chances are, with or without hard facts, many people are going to be like, no, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. This story reminds us that our culture still places a great deal of importance on a little old school value called word on the street. But guess what your little sister might still do? Go on a date with Johnny Scorsese. Because what this scandal reminds us is that people also, as a general rule, don't like to be told what to think, how to feel, and how to react, especially if they come to find out that a personal vendetta might be governing the motives behind your advice. To me, that's the heartbeat of the Andrew Callaghan scandal. Word on the street is that Andrew Callaghan had earned himself the reputation of being a little bit of a creep. Do with that information what you will. For some people, that was enough to write him off, and for others, most of his audience, it seems, it was not. What I hope to accomplish with this video is for us to ask ourselves why, and for us to think about what we can learn from other people's mistakes. I stand with victims. I am a victim. And it's precisely because I care about holding alleged abusers accountable that the way this campaign went down makes me so fucking mad. If you really care about protecting the public and this isn't all about you, do us a favor and get your shit together. Because it's important to never forget, you're a woman. Nobody gives a you, and nobody has any sympathy for you. The minute you go public and come for someone in this way, you've made a declaration of war. And if you're not strategically prepared, your ass and your entire cause will be taken down in the process. Go forth and cancel people accordingly. So today's video will be a deep dive about how a YouTube star rose to fame, fell from grace, and came back intact, leaving the internet in a state of joy, confusion, repulsion. It's a story that makes us wonder what this says about audiences on the internet and what it says about the future of the very society Channel 5's work reminds us is in a bit of a state of decay. So without further ado, this is the look today. So, the look. The t-shirt is bootleg Chanel Fruit of the Loom edition, otherwise known as Fennel. I got it at an estate sale. The jacket is vintage Joff, whatever, outerwear. It's an outerwear brand. I also got this at an estate sale. The shorts, I don't know what brand the shorts are, and I got it at a warehouse sale from a business that's supposed to be going out of business, but they've been like going out of business for the past 3 years. So I think their whole business model is pretending like they're going out of business. And the shoes are the Q Osmo by YRU, which is like, if you know, you know, it's a classic. It's a platform classic, raver, gothy vibe classic. And the hair is by me. I did my own hair. So welcome to my channel. My name is AD. And if you like my hair, gee, thanks. Just bought it. So we're going to start with Andrew Callaghan's story as a creator, then move on to the scandal that led to his downfall. We'll cover all the allegations and major events surrounding them, and we'll end the video with his comeback arc and what we can learn from it. Let's get started. Andrew Callaghan is a 26-year-old American journalist born in Philadelphia but raised in Seattle, Washington. It's in this rapidly gentrifying landscape that Andrew became attracted to counterculture and shit. Early in life, he got into graffiti, rapping, partying, spending his afternoons smoking weed at Pike's Place Market. According to a Vice interview, he apparently did so many magic mushrooms as a teenager that it left him with a little something called hallucinogenic perception disorder. HPPD is a post-hallucinogenic intoxication disorder that can leave some people with visual perceptual disturbances, like visual snow. It can also lead to feelings of depersonalization and derealization. You feel like you're living in a simulation and are trapped behind your eyes. Some victims of this disorder end up contemplating suicide. In Andrew's case, his coping mechanism would be to seek out intense experiences like the ones he'd eventually collect on the road for his YouTube channels to make him feel alive and present in his body. But before any of that could happen, he'd need to cross paths with a teacher who would change everything. Andrew Callaghan hated school, but there's always been this kind of innate curiosity that existed within him. Yes, he'd spend his afternoon smoking weed at Pike's Place or hanging out under bridges, but he'd also in those environments end up connecting with some pretty incredible, unconventionally inspiring people, like the homeless. Seattle at that time was a rapidly changing place, and Andrew started to witness firsthand how the communities he was connecting with and the people he cared about were being displaced and torn apart by the tech industry and billionaires coming to town. And when you add to that, also having experienced one of his Native American friends being killed at the hands of the police and then the police officer being acquitted, Andrew also started to develop a sense of justice. In his own words, these experiences led him to develop a kind of journalistic fury that inspired him to work in the spirit of issues like police brutality and systematic oppression in the urban setting. Luckily for Andrew, when he was in high school, a teacher called Calvin Shaw saw the potential in him and understood the vision. Calvin decided to strike up a deal with Andrew. Andrew would be allowed to skip class and be marked as present, so long as while he skipped class, he would write for the school newspaper about what he got up to. As it turns out, this little acne-ridden, curly-haired schmuck got up to a lot of cool shit. He interviewed juggalos, he wrote about how to acquire drugs and arrange assassinations on the darknet market Silk Road. He was able to be on the ground of the Occupy Seattle movement, getting to know the organizers and kicking it with the activists. His work was so impressive that it eventually earned him a full scholarship at Loyola University in New Orleans, Louisiana. And it would be in this hot and muggy backdrop that Andrew Callaghan would launch the viral social media project, which would basically set the scene for the rest of his career, a little series called Quarter Confessions.
I would say one of my deepest, darkest secrets is I can suck my own.
The city of New Orleans offers tourists more than just beignets. I'm a big foodie. I've never had one. I'm Canadian, so I've had Tim Hortons donuts. Half Italian, so I've had bombolones. But I've never had beignets, and I can't wait to try it. Bourbon Street in New Orleans is one of the most famous party destinations in the world. And this is where Andrew Callaghan started working as a doorman in college. On the job, Andrew started to witness firsthand how Bourbon Street at night would transform into this chaotic, drunkenly belligerent microcosm of American society. And he was like, I need to document this shit. His friend Michael at the time also had the idea of creating a kind of taxi cab confession style show where intoxicated people on Bourbon Street would be asked to reveal their deepest, darkest secrets on camera. The two would eventually join forces, and the Instagram and YouTube series called Quarter Confessions was born, and shit went viral. Pretty soon, anywhere Andrew went on Bourbon Street, a small crowd would follow, hoping for an opportunity to either be on camera or witness the f***ery.
My mom.
This was shock jock content at its finest, and the bulk of the shock found in Quarter Confessions was sexual in nature. Quarter Confessions literally had people admitting to incest, sucking their own, throwing up on a girl because her pussy stank, cheating on their significant other, etc. The show accumulated 14,000 subscribers on YouTube, but the bulk of the magic seemed to have happened on Instagram, where today the Quarter Confessions account has over 349,000 followers. Quarter Confessions is where fans first started to see Andrew Callaghan develop the creative style and persona we know him for today. This is where the now iconic suit made its first iteration. At first, it was more of a Mardi Gras vibe. This would eventually evolve on his next project into something a little closer to Borat meets The Office. This is where we first start to see the passive, let people spill their guts to you and don't interfere, interviewing style fans have grown to love. And of course, we have the video editing. Chaotic, fast-paced, hard cuts, thematically and visually leapfrogging from attention-grabbing non sequitur to non sequitur.
We got some breaking news here.
I love Quarter Confessions is where this style first makes its appearance in ultra short form. And finally, we have the beginning of recurrent thematics in Andrew Callaghan's work, such as being able to find shitty aspiring rappers wherever he goes, and interviewing mentally unwell, heavily intoxicated people for the internet's entertainment. Only the good stuff. Luckily for Quarter Confessions, the blowback wasn't so bad. Some people asked to be blurred out. One sorority girl who admitted to cheating on her boyfriend on camera threatened to sue, but big picture, the payoff of making this kind of ethically questionable content was worth the risk. When asked by his college newspaper if Andrew was worried about the work he was doing on Quarter Confessions affecting his job prospects for the future, Andrew had the foresight to anticipate that no. In fact, this may be the very type of thing that gets him the job and opens him all of the doors. And he was right on the money. And the money would be a little project you may be familiar with that took him to the next level, the YouTube channel All Gas No Brakes.
Our subconscious actually creates our reality, but our objective observer, which is our consciousness, is just a backseat observer of what our subconscious has already mapped out for us.
What the hell? True.
See, thank you.
The work Andrew Callaghan did on Quarter Confessions led him to connect with the owners of a media company called Doing Things Media. At the time, the bread and butter of Doing Things Media was monetizing a network of meme accounts on social media. They had come across Andrew Callaghan's series called Quarter Confessions and were interested in collaborating with him on some original content. The project Andrew would eventually pitch to them would be the series we know today as All Gas No Brakes. All Gas No Brakes was a series inspired by a zine Andrew had published recounting stories from his journey hitchhiking across America during his freshman year in college. The zine was titled All Gas No Brakes, A Hitchhiker's Diary, and his pitch to Doing Things Media sounded a little something like, if you buy me an RV, I'll make a sick show out of it and it'll be a cultural exploration of America. The reality of the kind of content Andrew and his crew would make for All Gas No Brakes, at the beginning at least, really wasn't that deep, okay? All Gas No Brakes was basically Quarter Confessions on steroids.
My name's Razma.
The main difference being, instead of chronicling chaos on one street, Doing Things Media would hook Andrew up with the resources to interview people in epicenters of chaos and belligerence across America. Andrew would travel to Burning Man, Area 51, Alien Con, Talladega Nights, the AVN Awards, Florida. There's always weird shit happening in Florida. And then all that footage would be packaged into fun little clickbaity, memeable mosaics.
What are your thoughts on the aliens, man? They're here. They're here. They're here right now.
No shade, okay? But All Gas No Brakes at the beginning literally made an art out of interviewing people who were very clearly on drugs, mentally unwell, and or mentally unfit to make sense of the world around them and let them make fools out of themselves, okay? It doesn't seem to me like the coverage was done in a malicious way. okay? It's lighthearted, it's fun and games, but it's meme shit, okay? And memes don't make a heavy-hitting journalist out of its creator. And it seems like eventually that would be part of the problem. The world would eventually slide into actual chaos and actual division. The come up of all gas, no brakes would coincide with the come up of the game-changing coronavirus pandemic. The world is shutting down, protests are erupting everywhere, and Callaghan senses an opportunity. While party content worked, Andrew Callaghan wanted to be more than just a meme guy. He felt like eventually this kind of content would run its course, and simultaneously he felt compelled to create content that was more meaningful and relevant to the current social context. The coronavirus pandemic had led to a media blackout that led many journalists unable to go out there in the field. Andrew Callaghan, on the other hand, was at an advantage. He was equipped with an RV, he had a production crew, and he didn't really have anybody to answer to except for Doing Things Media. He was in a perfect position to make a quick pivot, and that's what he did. Over the span of a few months, All Gas No Brakes pivoted from interviewing crackheads in Las Vegas to being on the grounds of the Minneapolis protests, the Portland protests, the coronavirus lockdown protests, the Proud Boys rally. This more politicized, serious content risked alienating the audience who came to All Gas No Brakes for fun and memes. But by and large, the opposite happened. It helped the channel reach new heights. Let me just take you back in time here, okay? When many people were quarantined at home or too fucking scared to be out in public, remember when we were out here like disinfecting all over groceries? This man and his crew were out there in the middle of a fucking Kmart being looted, okay? And people were into it. It made people in the industry take notice and be like, this guy's the real fucking deal. Unfortunately for Andrew, his business partners at Doing Things Media, the people funding All Gas No Brakes, weren't thrilled with the new direction. The problem with making content that's political is that it can be a lot harder to monetize. You can't sell as many mugs with Andrew Callaghan's face on it when you're passing Antifa the mic. But Andrew felt like selling mugs with his face on it was fucking corny anyways. This would evolve into a bit of a battle of creative visions where Doing Things Media was unhappy with Andrew. Andrew felt like he was losing control of the brand, yet contractually obligated to meet production quotas. And all of a sudden, All Gas No Brakes went dark. Around November 2020, All Gas No Brakes stopped posting content. The show's social media accounts proceeded to become inactive for months. Then, sometime around March 2021, fans of the show would get a cryptic message on the All Gas No Brakes Instagram account. The message read, quote, "Sorry for the lack of content. The team is still working on a secret project that we can announce soon. In the meantime, we're officially taking the show international and looking for correspondents from around the world." End quote. And then Andrew Callaghan would drop the bomb. On his personal Instagram account, he'd share the following statement, quote, "I am no longer associated with All Gas No Brakes. I no longer receive any of the Patreon, crowdfunding, YouTube monetization, or any other income. My team, Nick and Evan, who lived in the RV and created the original material with me, also are no longer involved. We have no control over any AGNB pages or the future of the show." And he concluded the statement with, "I signed an employment contract without reading it. Lesson learned." In interviews, we'd eventually learn the almost full story. Andrew Callaghan had signed a bad deal. When approaching Doing Things Media with the concept for All Gas No Brakes, the company had agreed to give Andrew everything he needed to succeed. They hooked him up with an RV, they gave him a $45,000 a year salary, he had money for production, equipment, and he was able to hire his friends. All Andrew needed to do in return was sign a contract. Unfortunately, he didn't read it. As a result of this oversight, Andrew Callaghan basically had agreed to a 360 deal with Doing Things Media, where the company owned most of everything he did, including the rights to the brand, the intellectual property, and the name All Gas No Brakes. Basically, in exchange for financing the project, Doing Things Media would own the product, the rights to the combination of things that makes the product unique, and eventually the lion's share of the product's profits. In turn, Andrew Callaghan, on paper, was nothing more than a glorified employee who got 20% of commission off sales. Eventually, sometime around mid-December 2020, Andrew Callaghan requested a bigger portion of the profits as well as to be let out of his contract. Days after he made the request, Doing Things Media would repossess its assets and lock Andrew and his crew out of the social media profiles. The company would proceed to fire Andrew's collaborators. They would also threaten to fire Andrew if he failed to meet production quotas. They tried to get him to turn the show over to a new host. Andrew refused, and in March 2021, he'd lose the brand he'd helped build and was fired. It could have been devastating, but it wasn't. What Andrew and his crew would proceed to create out of the ashes of All Gas No Brakes would be bigger and better than anything they'd ever done, okay? The only catch was that they'd need to strike while the iron was hot, and they still had internet clout. And that's how Channel 5 News with Andrew Callaghan was born.
Do you feel responsible for what happened to the Sandy Hook families?
Yes, children.
But beyond that,
I went in that school, I pulled a gun out, and I shot every one of them myself. I mean, I'm guilty. It's true.
No.
Within a month of being fired from Doing Things Media, Andrew and his crew announced that they'd be launching a brand new independent digital journalism experience called Channel 5 News with Andrew Callaghan. In an actual manifestation of the saying, there's more that unites us than divides us, if there's one thing all American cities have in common is that they all have a Channel 5 News. Their first Instagram teaser read, "We're back, y'all. Spring break forever. Patreon up and running. Full episode in bio." And when the first episode dropped on YouTube, the most liked comment came from the Jesus Christ, who proclaimed, "Resurrected." The project launched fast and strong, and fans flocked to support it. According to TubeFilter, as of the 5th of April, 2021, which was 4 days after they started to tease the project on Instagram, the Patreon had already hit 1,549 subscribers. At the time, they were offering $5 and $10 subscription tiers. As well, it seems like their Instagram had quickly ballooned to 131,000 followers. And within give or take 1 calendar year of launching, Channel 5 had already surpassed All Gas No Brakes by celebrating the 1.79 million subscriber milestone on YouTube. In an interview with The Face, Andrew Callaghan goes, quote, "I don't want to be a 35-year-old man in a 1994 camper van with the same suit I wore when I was 20 years old, talking to conspiracy lunatics. I don't want to be a character. I want to be a human being. And I think it's working." Channel 5 News with Andrew Callaghan was a huge success. And when you start watching the content, you understand why. Okay, it's some really good shit. Watching Channel 5 is like taking a massive bong hit, okay, and being like, that's some really good shit. Some really good shit. What was that? What was that? And with this project, Andrew and his crew were able to materialize the creative vision they'd been longing to achieve. Channel 5's content became an interesting hybrid that not only hits the funny bone, but also allows Andrew to be the journalist he always wanted to be. The channel's videos combine the lighthearted, shock jock, absurd, meme-esque circus clown content that attracted fans to his work in the first place, but also manages to infuse coverage of more serious, socially meaningful events and realities. With this project, Andrew got to follow his interests wherever it took him. And on Channel 5, it takes the audience from the dark corners of the political fringes to weirdos in Florida. He's always interviewing weirdos in Florida. Channel 5 News is what helped Andrew Callaghan become more than just a meme guy. In fact, the work he did on Channel 5 is what cemented him as the internet generation's superstar gonzo journalist to watch. Exclusive interviews with Q Shaman and Alex Jones, being on the grounds of the truckers' convoy in Canada or the war in Ukraine. In a 2022 feature, Rolling Stone magazine referred to Channel 5 as the leading street journalism team, and they would refer to Andrew Callaghan as one of the hardest working and possibly best known journalists of his generation. But they'd make sure to add, at least on the internet, which my research would lead me to discover was a bit of a pain point. Like many creators, Andrew Callaghan had his sights set on being bigger than just the internet. And with this next project, the documentary film This Place Rules, it seemed like he was on the cusp of making that dream come true. While Andrew was at All Gas No Brakes, it seems like his more political coverage, like the George Floyd Minneapolis protest, got the attention of two people in Hollywood, Tim Heidecker and Eric Wareheim of the Adult Swim comedy duo Tim and Eric. Sometime around 2020, Tim Heidecker had discovered Andrew and slid into his DMs on social media, suggesting that they should collaborate on something creative. As a result of this connection, Andrew would enter a development deal with Tim and Eric's Absolutely Productions and Doing Things Media to turn All Gas No Brakes into a long-form project. Filming for that project began in October 2020, But from what I understand, when the relationship with Doing Things Media fell apart, the vision for the project would evolve into the documentary film we know today as This Place Rules. The concept of This Place Rules is best described as a travelogue documentary film that follows Andrew Callaghan as he travels across America in the weeks leading up to the January 7th insurrection on Capitol Hill. The film was produced by many people, including Absolutely Productions and guess who? Jonah Hill. I hope as collaborators they, respected each other's boundaries. The film took 4 months to make and 2 years to sell, but they'd eventually sell it, and the buyer would be none other than cream of the crop, the best in the game, hands down, HBO. This could have propelled Andrew to new heights. But as we say in French, it was not the gag it was supposed to be. The promo tour for This Place Rules started in the beginning of December 2022. With the PR and marketing power of an HBO, Andrew Callaghan's public profile was at the highest it's ever been. Okay, he got mainstream interviews with NPR, Gizmodo, Variety. He managed to get his ass onto CNN, where he'd make headlines for triggering Don Lemon by implying that the network contributes to sowing division and conflict in America. Andrew would appear on big podcasts like Theo Vaughn's, Leftovers with Ethan Klein, this podcast Fear and Whatever with Hassan Piker, and I don't know who the other guy is. Unfortunately, all this push marketing would push Andrew's face down the wrong throats. And Ghost from his past would basically be like, oh, you think this man is the shit? Well, I'ma show you he ain't even the fart. And just like that, it all came crashing down. But not for long. You'll see why. So the shitstorm scandal started with a woman called Carolyn, also known on TikTok as Cornbread Casserole. On the 5th of January 2022, a few days after This Place Rules premiered, she posted a allegation video on TikTok recounting a story that quickly went viral. Carolyn would become the de facto leader of the takedown campaign or accountability campaign, whatever the you want to call it. Take down, accountability, whatever, okay? So the alleged story is that in 2021, Carolyn had met Andrew Callaghan at a bar in St. Petersburg, Florida. She was reportedly a fan of the show. The two connected, and after exchanging some DMs, they decided to meet up again at the same bar. According to Carolyn, she was under the impression that Callaghan had a girlfriend at the time, and as a result, she didn't expect the meeting to be anything sexual. She felt like Andrew was trying to get her heavily intoxicated by buying her round after round of tequila shots. He tried to kiss her. She refused. And at that point, Andrew leaned into the alleged script quite a few people who would come forward after Carolyn claimed he used to acquire. The script being that while transiently in town, he had a falling out with his crew members, or that his accommodation plans fell through, and that he needed a place to stay for the night.
So I will tell you that he did eventually get consent. And that's the main point, is that he eventually got consent because he wore me down. He told me he needed a place to stay for the night. He had some sort of falling out with one of his crew members or whatever, and I was very clear about the fact that we are not hooking up. He gets in my bed and wears me down to the point where I eventually do agree to do things that I wasn't proud of. And I wasn't proud of them and thought it was my fault for so long that I continued to be nice to him after the situation. And then as time went on and I processed things, I thought, you know what, just because eventually I said, okay, whatever, because I was trying to just get the whole night over with so that it could be morning so that he could leave. It doesn't discount the fact that I told him no. And he still found a way to coerce me into things that I didn't want to do.
After this alleged event took place, it did not sit well with Carolyn, and according to NPR, she did a few things. She told her boyfriend about the incident. Her boyfriend of the time confirmed this with NPR. She also spoke to one of her friends about the incident, and this friend proceeded to attempt to expose Andrew Callaghan on social media. The friend, who chose to remain anonymous, shared those alleged Instagram posts from 2021 with NPR. The post goes, it's a screenshot of Andrew Callaghan's Instagram page, and the caption reads, "He knowingly sexually assaulted my friend and got away with it. Please stop supporting this dumbass show and unfollow him." This post would apparently lead to a few other people coming forward to Carolyn's anonymous friend, the anonymous file format, with their stories. From what I understand, this campaign would not pick up any significant steam, but I did come across some interesting information. From what I understand, at that time, 2 other people would come forward to Carolyn's friend, insinuating that Andrew may have done some weird shit in New Orleans and Nashville. This is interesting because the third thing Carolyn would do in 2021, according to NPR, would be to confront Andrew Callaghan directly. NPR reported getting access to text message screenshots, which they did not share with the public, between Carolyn and Callaghan that confirmed the interaction. According to NPR, at first, it seemed like Callaghan was sympathetic to whatever happened to Carolyn that night. In a long message, he apparently acknowledged that the social power dynamics at play can, quote, dramatically warp consent, and he claimed that he had tried to unpack his behavior in therapy. He also allegedly told Carolyn, quote, I want to do whatever I possibly can to be accountable and support you in whatever way you'd like. It would mean the world to me to be able to have an open conversation with you. And relevantly to the two anonymous allegations file format would crowdsource, he also allegedly acknowledged that prior partners from New Orleans and Nashville had reached out to him in response to the Instagram post, and that he had started dialogues with them that had, quote, benefited all of their lives for the better. Again, from what I understand, it seems like following this interaction, Carolyn and Callaghan had reached some kind of private resolution to this alleged conflict. However, according to Carolyn and her friend, at some point, Andrew's opinion flipped, and he, quote, gaslit her with a completely different view of what happened that night. Based on what I was able to piece together from this story, this leaves a sour taste in Carolyn's mouth. She feels compelled to go public before she actually goes public. The timeline is really ambiguous here. I wasn't able to pinpoint when exactly this was. According to Carolyn, Andrew successfully seemed to have talked her out of it up until his success would become too painful for her to bear. And this is not my cynical interpretation of things. This is literally how she would kickstart the framing of her allegation video. It's not about revenge or about getting even, but
I never in a million years thought that I would be making this video, and I'm shaking because I've tried a couple different times and haven't been able to get my point across, but I don't like seeing abusers get platforms. And my abuser, Andrew Callaghan, also known as All Gas No Breaks, Channel 5, and whatever his new HBO show's called, I forget, has been plastered all over my news feed, and I've tried to come to him person to person and try to get him to take accountability for what he did, but his version of what happened the night that he assaulted me is so skewed. And this is really hard for me to say. I never thought I would come forward, but it's even more hard to have to relive the trauma that I endured every single day by seeing this man as a social justice warrior, as someone who cares about human rights, get a platform. You shouldn't be supporting him.
she would also, later in an interview with Rolling Stone, claim that she came forward following the release of This Place Rules because it was, quote, painful for her to see everyone praising him. Okay, so maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe I'm the idiot. This man hurt me, and I don't like to see someone who hurt me become successful while I'm still hurting. So I think everyone should know that he hurt me so he can suffer consequences where it hurts him. I don't know. Maybe I'm intellectually challenged. Maybe I'm the idiot, but sounds like revenge. Okay. In an interview with Rolling Stone, Dana, the next woman who'd come forward, would address the big ass discourse they'd eventually be pressured to respond to surrounding the integrity of their motives. And she'd say, quote, "It's not blackmail. It's not revenge. It's called karma." At that point, it became very clear to me that Dana did not understand the concept of karma. Karma, based on my research in the cultures and religions that believe in it, is considered to be a form of cosmic or divine retribution. It happens automatically and independently from intentional, proactive human intervention. When harm is caused on an individual, in order for them to feel the effects of the harm they caused us, that's not karma, that's revenge. And that's a big difference. In fact, I read somewhere, okay, people who truly believe in karma tend to be less inclined to enact acts of revenge. Because if you really believe that the universe would take care of someone like Andrew Callaghan, okay, you wouldn't feel the need to interfere. So this is this campaign's first critical strategic mistake. While the motives behind people coming forward with allegations don't change the allegations, what it does change is the way people receive, process, and react to them. When you come forward with allegations, okay, that threaten people's perceptions of individuals they love, if your crusade is exposed as selfish and not mostly in service of public safety and public good, you will ultimately lose. Which leads me to this campaign's critical strategic mistake number 2. This
You shouldn't be supporting him.
is fucking annoying.
A lot of people don't believe me. I've got receipts, I've got photos of us, I've got text messages, but you shouldn't need that. You should believe me and you should stop supporting Andrew Callaghan.
With all due respect, don't tell me how to live. You don't get to decide how strangers react to the information you divulge to them on the internet. And pressuring the public in one direction or another will only make people tune you the fuck out. Especially if you're a woman. Remember this. Nobody has sympathy for you. Nobody has sympathy for us. Nobody gives a fuck about us. Nobody gives a fuck about us. Okay? We don't live in a world that believes victims, especially women, okay, are in the best position to identify what justice looks like for the crimes enacted upon them. This is the logic behind why we have judges and juries. So this?
I've got receipts, I've got photos of us, I've got text messages, but you shouldn't need that. You should believe me and you should stop supporting Andrew Callaghan.
Don't do that. Don't do that. That's not how life fucking works, okay? If people don't know you, they won't just blindly trust you, especially if you have a vagina. So if you've got the receipts, honey buns, you better drop them right out of the gate. And if you don't, share your story, stick to the facts, and keep it moving. Keep it pushing. Keep it pushing. But the mistake that enraged people the most, well, I won't talk for you, but I'll talk for me, okay? The mistake that enraged me the most poignant example of a glaring lack of critical thinking would be the fact that Carolyn thought it would be a good move to text Andrew Callaghan prior to releasing her allegation video on TikTok. In the text message, Carolyn requests financial compensation for damages she incurred as a result of the trauma experienced that night. Fair enough. But she doesn't mention this text message in her allegation video, and as a result, loses an opportunity to get ahead of the story. Andrew's team would later be able to spin the whole thing in his favor. The text message goes, Carolyn goes, I don't really want a response from you because I already know your skewed version of what happened the last time I saw you. I just want you to know that seeing friends of mine promote your new show, which I'm not discounting, came with a lot of hard work, hurts me in ways I wish you could feel sometimes. Anyways, if HBO cuts you a fat check and you in any way feel like helping contribute to the massive amounts of therapy bills I have accrued due to the night you coerced me and the resulting trauma, my Venmo is thanks. And when Andrew did eventually release a statement, his team was able to spin this request for damages into a juicy ass story of blackmail. The statement goes, Andrew is devastated that he's being accused of any type of physical or mental coercion against anyone. Conversations about pressure and consent are extremely important, and Andrew wants to have these conversations so he can continue to learn and grow. While every dynamic is open to interpretation and proper communication is critical from all those involved, repeated requests for money should not be part of these conversations. So his team did not provide any evidence of repeated requests for money. We only have evidence of one, but nonetheless, the blackmail narrative stuck. Carolyn and her anonymous friend tried to explain themselves away and do damage control, but it was too little too late, and Carolyn lost credibility. For those who didn't have time to read into the story, all they saw were blackmail headlines. In a Reddit comment, Carolyn goes, I wanted him to know that, hey, I'm still here and I see you. I didn't expect a cent. It was more of a hi. You said these allegations were ruining your life, and that's clearly not true, but they're ruining mine. When I made the TikTok video, I wasn't even thinking about the fact that I had sent this text. I didn't know I was going to make it until 2 minutes prior. I was frustrated with his clout knowing that he's done this to multiple women. Carolyn's friend goes, this text was sent as a you to him. His legal team seems to have all this proof, but isn't giving any statements to the reporters we have talked to, and doesn't seem to be showing the proof they have. They are full of shit, and his reaction to this by having his lawyers paint her as someone solely looking for money or clout is horrible and deliberate. Yeah. Alleged assholes don't usually tend to roll over easily and accept defeat. Deliberately trying to defend themselves, even if it means playing dirty, usually what's going to happen. But if you thought that was dumb, buckle up. It gets worse. A woman called Dana, otherwise known on TikTok as Moldy Freckles, was noticed in the comment section of Carolyn's allegation video with her own story of misconduct, and inadvertently become the second public face of the campaign to hold Andrew Callaghan accountable. Actually, I'm curious to know, do you think this was more of a takedown campaign or a campaign to hold him accountable? I'd love to know in the comment section. So Dana would detail a story of an evening turned sour, where following a date with Andrew, he'd ask her to drive him home. Once in the car,
he started advancing towards me, started touching my inner thigh, pulled me forward, and started kissing my neck. So I really couldn't move out of the position. He was holding me tightly. He proceeded to put his hand down my pants. I told him to stop. I told him to get off of me multiple times. He tried to put my hand down his pants, and I was, fighting against him during this, told him to please stop. He said, "You could at least suck my d-." And I said, "No, I don't want to do that. Get out of my car." At that point, it was, "I'm not taking you home anymore. Get the fuck out of my car."
I was very optimistic about this allegation video because it started off strong.
I want to start off by saying that I wouldn't have been able to do this without Caroline posting that TikTok first. She gave me the opportunity to feel comfortable enough to actually show my face and talk to a bunch of strangers online about something very personal that's happened to me. I'm not gonna let someone else go through this alone. I really don't care what you have to say, because I'm just saying the truth right now, and I don't care what you believe, but I want, other women who he's affected to feel comfortable about talking about it. I'm not saying you have to talk about it, but to realize that, this isn't your fault. This isn't an isolated event. This is a pattern that this guy has, and your feelings are valid, and whatever happened to you is valid.
Pretty solid. She doesn't make it about herself. She makes it about the mission and about the victims. No notes. But then things start taking a downward turn.
It's already a really difficult thing to talk about. And, some people are like, well, why are you just now coming out with this, that he has a HBO Max special? So I will say personally, I ignored him, blocked him from my life, ignored everything that he was doing after what occurred to me. This is not the worst thing that has happened to me. I've experienced worse. Most women experience some type of sexual abuse or assault in their lifetime more than once. My previous coping mechanism was to ignore them, forget about it, never think about it again. It kind of fades away in your memory. I tried to do that with Andrew. I don't even know what Channel 5 is. I knew him first from Quarter Confessions. But yeah, I would see like a snippet of a video of him or something, and I would immediately just scroll away from it. So I actually had no idea how popular he was becoming. But when I went on my HBO Max to put on the new Sex and the City season, which sucks, by the way, but that's why it's great. This dude's creepy ass face, or animated face, is on my TV. This dude has a fucking HBO Max special? Nah. I can no longer ignore it. And I'm not gonna fucking put up with this. Anyways, I have a lot to say, and I have a whole story. I don't want this to be dragged out for too long, because I want people to pay attention to what I'm saying.
Well, that's exactly how you make people not pay attention to what you're saying. She makes the same mistake Carolyn did by making it sound like her coming forward came from a selfish place. And then she prefaces her detailing of the actual alleged incident of SA by revealing that the content of her character includes being a user.
I'm just gonna, in brief, say that I had hooked up with Andrew previously. He creeped me out, made me feel weird, was mean, demanding. He hit me up again after this time to hang out with me again, and I said, no, I don't want to hang out with you anymore. I don't want to sleep with you ever again. Asked me why. I told him why. He invited me to go out to dinner so he could apologize. So I went to this dinner because honestly, I don't care about an apology, because I wouldn't believe it anyways, but I was like, free food, whatever,
So, this guy's a creep. You have no intention of accepting his apology, but you'll use him for a free meal. It doesn't justify the alleged incident of SA, but from an optics standpoint, not a good look. So the internet would come for moldy freckles in all of the predictable ways. She would feel compelled to make a follow-up video in which she addresses one of the main points of contention. How can we take you seriously when you're wearing a Queen of the Stone Age t-shirt and the guys in that band, or at least one of the guys in that band, have been accused of abuse? And guess what Moldy Freckles does? She admits to being a thief.
Addressing a few things. First of all, The shirt that I was wearing, the Queens of the Stone Age, I didn't even know that was a band. Apparently it's a band where some members have been accused of sexual assault. I stole that shirt from somebody, to be honest.
I have no other words than Italian words to describe how I'm feeling, okay? Ma che sei scema? Rimbambita? Ma che pensi? What were you thinking? But that's my whole problem. That's my whole problem, okay? With how this shit went down. They weren't thinking. They very clearly did not think things through. And as a result, this is what they sounded like. This guy hurt me and I'm mad. And I want you to do something about it. Obviously, it's more complex than that. He didn't just hurt them. He allegedly committed crimes and like assault, okay? But to strangers on the internet who don't have time to like look into this, that's what you sound like. You fall into the trap of a whiny sounding woman. And you know what large parts of the internet would tell them? How does this affect my life? It doesn't. Rent's due, inflation's killing me, my back hurts, my butt hurts, my girlfriend won't f me like she used to. I don't give a f. I don't give a f. And you know, nobody especially gives a f if you're a woman. I honestly wish it was a joke, but it's not a joke. Despite all these flops, the work Carolyn and Dana put in did manage to have some impact. Thanks to these ladies and their crowdsourcing efforts, dozens of people would come forward with first and secondhand accounts involving Andrew. It would be the collective impact of all of these allegations put together, rumors, hearsay, and all, that would do the real damage. And the terrifying mood board these stories created looks and sounds a little bit something like this. Keep in mind, everything I'm saying here is alleged. This is dark, and if you'd like to skip this section, please do, okay? There's no such thing as a perfect victim, okay? But there's a difference between imperfection and stupidity. The allegation tableau. I'm not going to read all the text messages and all the screenshots. I will put them up on screen, and if you'd like to read them in more detail, you can just pause the video. Quite a few anonymous people came forward claiming that Andrew Callaghan had earned himself the reputation of being a bit of a creep in the local scenes of Seattle and New Orleans. Quite a few other anonymous people came forward claiming that they had knowledge of him using the bad Airbnb situation script as a way to access as well. A woman who we'll call Navy came forward with a story claiming that she had hung out with Andrew and some friends at a Navy base. During the hangout, Andrew allegedly acted weirdly possessive, trying to grab and isolate her from her friends. The group thought that it was weird and decided to take an Uber to a venue called The Willow. Andrew followed them in his own Uber. At The Willow, he allegedly forcibly tried to make out with Navy. He also tried to push her into the idea of having a with him and his girlfriend at the time. The boyfriend of one of the people in the friend group tried to fight Andrew. Eventually, Navy left the Willow to go home, but Andrew tried to follow her there until she sprinted off in fear. Someone called Pour It Up 679 came forward in the H3H3 production subreddit with a story claiming that Andrew had invited her into his RV and started requesting sex. Despite protests and putting down the idea, he would not take no for an answer. Eventually, he settled on being okay with just oral. She acquiesced, hoping that if she gave him oral, he'd leave her alone. While receiving oral, he asked his friend to give him a condom and kept pushing her for until she gave in. A TikTok user called Olive Yat came forward with a story claiming that Andrew had invited her to a dive bar in Los Angeles called the Golden Gopher. She met up with him and proceeded to go to a house party. After the party, Andrew allegedly repeatedly asked the woman to let him come back to her house. She repeatedly refused, saying she just wanted to be friends and not have sex. Andrew allegedly continued to ask and pressure the woman. She eventually gave in. A woman under the alias of Charlotte/Anna came forward to Rolling Stone magazine and The Stranger, claiming that when she was 18, she connected with Andrew through Tinder. They went out for coffee and eventually he brought her back to his apartment for wine and a movie. Once they got back to the apartment, she claims there was an abrupt shift in tone. The two started kissing, which at first seemed okay to her, but at some point, Andrew poured wine on her shirt, took off her shirt, and licked the wine off her bare chest. Andrew allegedly then placed his hands on her crotch and started pushing for sex. She refused his advances. He wouldn't take no for an answer and tried to guilt trip her into sexual acts. Charlotte left and allegedly never spoke to Andrew again. She allegedly provided Rolling Stone magazine and The Stranger with screenshots and recordings proving that she had been complaining about Andrew's behavior to friends since at least 2019. A woman called Jane gave an interview to The Stranger claiming that she had met Andrew at a bar in the Lower East Side of New York City. At the bar, they went to a more isolated upstairs area, and there Andrew began making moves on her, kissing her, groping her, moving her hands and head down towards his crotch area. Jane ended up leaving the venue to catch a train, and while waiting on the dock, she eventually noticed that Andrew had followed her there. At the dock, he started pleading with her to go with him. It seems like earlier in the night, he had told her that he was staying somewhere nearby, but it was in a good situation, and asked if he could stay with her. At the dock, she yelled at him to go away, and eventually he left. A week later, she would cross paths with him again, and he would allegedly begin to be touchy with her. She'd allegedly try to confront him about how uncomfortable the interaction made her feel over text message, but he'd allegedly brush her off and brush off her concerns. A woman called Anonymously Reporting came forward on TikTok claiming that she had a simple relationship with Andrew in which she felt emotionally manipulated by him for casual sex when what she wanted was something more serious. She also claims that Andrew stealthed her. Stealthing is the act of secretly having sex without a condom when the other person had only consented to with a condom. She also detailed an incident where she had allegedly felt pressure to have sex with Andrew. Okay, so these are the very serious ones. A woman called Mary came forward to The Stranger claiming that in 2017, during her freshman year at Loyola University in New Orleans, she was AR'd by Andrew. She details a story where one night at a bar called The Boot, Andrew is buying her shots while remaining relatively sober himself. The next thing she remembers, she's at Andrew's place off campus. In bed, she recalls feeling pain and tells Andrew to stop so she can sleep. Andrew allegedly keeps going despite her protests. In the morning, she realizes what happens and confronts Andrew. He proceeds to mock her by saying that the only reason she was saying no was because his was too big. She claims never having come forward to the authorities out of fear and denial. She apparently spoke to 3 close friends about the incident at the time, including her therapist. The Stranger was able to confirm that Mary spoke to these 4 people about the incident at the time. A woman called Emma would also come forward to The Stranger, claiming that Andrew AR'd her in 2017 while she was a student at Loyola University in New Orleans. It seemed like Andrew had accompanied Emma back to her dorm room so she could grab something inside. She had requested he wait for her outside. He insisted on coming upstairs and once in her room allegedly refused to leave despite her asking him to. She tells him she needs to change and to close his eyes. When she takes off her clothes, he grabs her and starts having sex with her. She tells him to stop and that he's hurting her. She begins to cry and says no multiple times. Andrew allegedly ignores her, covers her mouth forcefully to keep her quiet, and allegedly tells her to shut up. The Stranger claims they were able to see text messages that Emma sent to a friend back in 2020 describing the incident. The friend also confirmed that Emma had told her about the incident back in 2018. Andrew's team claims that the 2 stories detailed in The Stranger are fabricated. They responded to The Stranger's request for comment with a statement that said, quote, "The allegations irresponsibly reported by The Stranger from 2 anonymous sources are patently false and simply did not happen. It is incomprehensible that this news outlet would run a fictitious story like this without credible evidence, while allowing the accusers to remain anonymous. Andrew has taken accountability for his role in other situations and will be the first to admit his shortcomings. However, these accusations go farther and are completely without merit. Andrew will utilize every option he has in order to clear his name and protect his reputation." Then we also have some people who came forward who, despite having overall positive sexual experiences with Andrew, described him as being a bit of a pushy person. So these were the main stories that surfaced during the scandal, and the net negative optics of this as a collective whole were obviously not good. As a result, Andrew's collaborators on This Place Rules, Tim Heidecker and Eric Wareheim, would publicly disown him. Many of Andrew's friends and peers in the progressive space would feel compelled to speak on the scandal. It opens up a big-ass discourse on the importance of enthusiastic consent that basically consisted of a bunch of debate bros being like, so what you really need to do in order to secure the consent of the is... And a guy called Ethan Klein being like, oh my God, I can't believe men get famous just to get laid. And me being like, I still can't believe grown-ass man still haven't figured out that the driving force behind most of anything is getting laid. On the topic of Ethan Klein, he'd unfortunately get sucked into the drama by accidentally spreading misinformation. As someone who struggles with anxiety and catastrophizing situations, it was really endearing to see Ethan Klein be like, I really want to speak on this because I've been in communication with Andrew and I want his side of the story to come out. And, you know, I feel bad for my friend because I'm afraid he's going to kill himself. Being like, and Ethan Klein's chat being like, Ethan, don't do it. Don't get involved. You're going to poison the well. And Ethan Klein being like, no, what do you mean? I'm not going to poison the well. And then he proceeds to poison the well. Ethan starts this narrative that Andrew had admitted to the allegations that came out before Andrew had put out a statement. And when he did put out a statement, he didn't admit to anything. But, you know, at least Ethan Klein has friends to defend, unlike my workaholic ass. Eventually, Andrew Callaghan would resurface and publish his apology onto a burner YouTube account. Naturally, the reception was mixed. Some thought it was good. Others thought it was a textbook non-apology. And then Andrew disappeared.
I never thought I'd make a video like this, but I think there's an important conversation to be had, and I just want to be fully accountable, honest, and transparent with all of you guys. So I'd like to start by thanking every single person who's came out in the past week to speak about different ways in which my behavior has made them feel uncomfortable or pressured during a sexual situation, and to people who said that I've made unwanted advances and had a hard time with rejection. I'm sure this was not easy to do. It's never easy to speak out, and it was hard for me to hear as well, because to be honest with you, up until this point, I didn't even really realize that I had this pattern that had affected multiple people. I'd also like to apologize for my silence. I think that when this stuff first came out, I was in a state of denial and shock. I was, just riding the high from my movie that just came out, and then within 48 hours, I was denounced by my closest collaborators, and my name was printed in 40 different news outlets next to the words misconduct, and I just kind of spiraled into a mental health crisis. So that being said, I want to make a few things clear. I've always taken no for an answer. As far as consent, I've never overstepped that line. But I think I want to have a more nuanced and important conversation about power dynamics, pressure, and coercion. A lot of the things that have been said online about me are not true. A lot of things are missing really important contextual information that I think would change people's interpretation of a lot of these situations, but I'm not here to invalidate anybody's lived experience. If you never want to watch Channel 5 again, I understand. I hope you remember the missions of radical empathy and media literacy that we have tried to put into the world through our coverage. All right.
For close to 7 months following Andrew Callaghan's apology video, Channel 5 News with Andrew Callaghan was dead. It was dead. Andrew disappeared from the internet, and many people, including myself, thought this was the end. But then, in August of 2023, fans of the show spotted Andrew Callaghan filming content at the National Hobo Center in Iowa. And 2 months later, he'd rise from the dead. 9 whole months after being accused of all of the above, Andrew Callaghan took to his Instagram stories to announce his return. Hello everyone, hope all is well. I have great news. Channel 5 will relaunch in exactly 24 hours. And on the 8th of October 2023, that's exactly what happened. Channel 5 News was rebooted and they'd proceed to release their first video. And then another.
I'm like, bro, for one fucking second, could you condemn Hamas terrorists? They're like, I don't know what you wanna. I'm from Argentina. What's the favorite place of vacation? The Bahamas.
And then another.
We see that babies in Gaza die. I'm sad about that, but I cannot, if it's their babies or our babies, it's not about choosing, it's just getting rid of Hamas so their babies can live in peace too.
And then another.
He didn't want to fight, so they put jalapenos in Kerr's asshole. They put jalapenos in Kerr's ass. They throw jalapenos in his asshole.
Channel 5 News with Andrew Callaghan would go on to release more content in 3 months than it previously would have in an entire calendar year. And one thing became glaringly obvious. The views and the performance of the content, sky high. Not a single L Many people were genuinely happy about his return, but it did leave some people confused and looking for answers. Andrew Callaghan had made a bunch of promises to the public in his apology video and committed to taking concrete steps towards becoming a better person. Fans expected him to touch base with them on how he had followed through with that. He would not. As a result, internet sleuths would be led to analyze his new content, looking for hints into his current state of mind. And what they'd find wouldn't be too promising. In January of 2023, Channel 5 posted a video called Philly Streets that chronicles some of the urban social problems in Philadelphia. And internet sleuths would zero in on the following clip.
Since making my last video in San Francisco, I've become aware of an entire side of the internet, particularly YouTube, that films homeless people under the guise of humanization and does huge numbers, and understandably so. Poverty is pornographic. For that reason, Kensington is pretty much the #1 homeless YouTube content zone in the country. In fact, there's like 50 YouTube documentaries up right now, just like this one, which all follow pretty much the same marketing strategy. City of Zombies, further dehumanizing Americans suffering from necrotizing fasciitis, and purposely using salacious language to collect ad revenue from views, which because of our declining attention span, which also comes as a result of a Chinese psyop called TikTok, are best driven by clickbait titles and shocking keyframes.
So in this clip, people notice that Andrew calls out creators on YouTube for their exploitative coverage of the homeless crisis in America by referring to the content as poverty. He then proceeds to shame these creators for using salacious, clickbaity titles to make money, and the visual aid he uses as an example of this would be the coverage of his own scandal. He comes for Vosh and he comes for Hassan Piker, and people were like, is this guy for real? Is this guy for fucking real?
It seems a little bit weird to me that he would be doing a bit on how, like, clickbait doesn't actually serve the interests of the poor when their suffering is documented. And then it would be like, here's an example of clickbait titles, and it's two people covering him being a rapist. You know what I mean? Like, look at all this salacious, degrading, exploitative coverage of the poor, and also of me being a rapist. I'm just like the zombies of Philadelphia, you know? I am suffering a spiritual necrotitis of the rotting of the leg in the streets of Philadelphia, in the form of people pointing out the race.
So yeah, not the best look. The sentiment being that had he genuinely engaged in the most important step of the rehabilitation process, which is acknowledging what he allegedly did wrong, he would not be salty about the way people covered the scandal. And as many people noticed, here Andrew Callaghan was again. He had previously done this to Adam 22, Trap Laura Ross, and Academics with his O-Block video. Here he is calling creators out for making exploitative content, and then he turns around and does the very same thing. You're really out here calling people out for doing poverty when, like, the biggest part of your come up rode off the back of fucking poverty. Like, are you dumb? Are you dumb? How about you don't forget where you came from? Andrew Callaghan's comeback also sparked a discussion surrounding whether or not this was an indication that cancel culture was over or a case study in Me Too backlash. I think that's part of the story, but I also think the truth is something a little closer to the conclusion a creator called Tom Dark came to. Shortly after it had become clear that Andrew Callaghan's comeback had been successful, a creator called Tom Dark posted a video proclaiming that Andrew had beat the allegations. I disagree with the statement, but I agree with the video's conclusion. Tom Dark's conclusion would be that Andrew Callaghan's comeback is an indication that content is king. And I agree with that. I don't think the success of Andrew Callaghan's comeback is as much about Andrew and how people feel about the scandal and whether or not they believe the victims, as much as it's about the value people on the internet continue to find in the content he creates. In our splintered media ecosystem, Andrew Callaghan's content solves a problem. There is an obvious thirst and demand for an independent, edgy, youth-driven perspective on current events, and currently, Andrew Callaghan is one of the few people doing that. We used to have Vice, but Vice lost its cool and credibility. So in many ways, Channel 5 is currently benefiting from a big, unsaturated, underserved market. That being said, I think the ground is right for new players to come in and give this guy a run for his money. I'd personally love to see it. I think competition is one of the only ways for us to determine whether his comeback has anything to do with how people feel about him or if it's really just about people wanting his product. At the end of the day, you might not like Jeff Bezos, but 24-hour shipping or in Callaghan's case, news from the front lines of America's border crisis, pretty fire. Pretty fire. I guess this is to be continued. Only time will tell. Channel 5 is currently recruiting fresh young talent to join their growing team. I'm sure plenty of hot, impressionable girls will be applying for the position. And NDA or not, if he f***ed up, we'll find out. In the meantime, Andrew Callaghan will continue to wear this scandal as a stain on his career for the rest of his life. His own Reddit community seems to have a permanent pinned comment at the top of most posts, reminding people of the allegations against him. While most comments under his social media content are positive, under every post, without fail, you will find a Lone Ranger, mostly male, putting himself in the digital line of fire by being like, cool video, this guy's a creep though. And it may not be the deplatforming these girls wanted, but it's something. And if Andrew now wants revenge, he wouldn't need to do anything. The internet took care of them. And for some reason, I get the feeling his Caucasian ass would also refer to that as karma.